Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this breakout session on celebrating a new book that we've just published called Points of Light, commemorating the Punta del Este Declaration on Human Dignity for Everyone Everywhere. My name is Brett Scharffs, and I'm the director of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies at Brigham Young University, and it's my pleasure to chair this session. With me on the dais are Ján Figeľ, former EU Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion and Belief in Europe, and one of the co-authors of the book that we're celebrating today, and also one of the conveners of the Punta del Este Declaration meeting that took place in December 2018. Next to him is Jane Wise, an associate director of our center, a longtime legal writing professor at Brigham Young University, and the key person who runs our Oxford University summer workshop for young scholars. This is the program that brings 15 emerging law and religion scholars from around the world each year to Oxford University for an intensive course on teaching about law and religion, and also learning how to write scholarly articles in English. We bring 3 full-time legal writing professors who work with those participants beginning 6 months before their arrival in Oxford. And immediately to my left, your right, is JaLynn Prince, who is the artist, the photographer, whose photographs illustrate and bring life and highlight the dignity of all people in the book. We're really pleased to be able to share this labor of love with you today. It all began with an anecdote. Ján Figeľ was meeting with us at BYU Law School in January 2018, and we were brainstorming about what we might do to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the adoption, unanimous adoption, by the UN General Assembly of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And we did it against a backdrop of concern. One concern we had was the politicization of human rights, the divisiveness of human rights. They've come to be subject to withering criticism from both the left and the right, and we were very mindful of that as we met and discussed what we might do. The second thing we were mindful of was the rise of identity politics. This, of course, is a significant issue in the United States, and we think also an issue of significance in many other parts of the world. And during our discussions, Ján told a story, and he may correct me if I get some of the details wrong, because I'll hand the microphone to him next. But it went something like this. Speaking to the government of Pakistan, "Hello, Pakistan, this is Ján Figeľ, the EU Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion and Belief outside of Europe, and I'd like to come meet with you." And he asked, can you imagine the response? And we could imagine, but we weren't sure. And soon he told us. He said, well, first there was a long silence. Then there was sucking air. Then there was a suspicious question. What do you want to talk about? And he had given careful thought to this, and he said, I'd like to come talk about human dignity and how it's important for all people at all times, in all places. And he said there was another silence, shorter, and not followed by a sucking of air, but instead a change of tone. Dignity, karama in Arabic. This is an important concept in the Quran. We Muslims care deeply about human dignity. Why don't you come and we can talk? And that opened a door. It built a bridge. It started a conversation. Ambassador Figeľ returned 3 or 4 times to Pakistan for conversations, not just about human dignity, but about human rights and religious freedom. Those conversations became increasingly high level, increasingly public, and also developed relationships of trust. Some of you were at the breakfast this morning where Asia Bibi spoke. Ján was the diplomat who was really at the center of negotiating her release as a political prisoner in Pakistan. And that was due in part to the relationships of trust that he had been able to develop. So that was the spark. We thought human dignity, that was in a way the foundational idea of the Human Rights Project, but also the goal, the telos, the objective of human rights. What are human rights for? To protect the dignity of the person, but also a measure of our success. How are we doing with respect to human rights? Well, take a look at how human dignity is respected in places like our prisons, our schools, our hospitals, our old folks' homes, on the border, in refugee camps. If human dignity is being honored in these difficult places, even if imperfectly, even in ways that are striving rather than complete, it will tell us a lot about the climate for human rights in those places. And so we convened a series of conferences in 2018. The first was at Central European University in Budapest, then one at Oxford University while we were there in the summer for our summer workshop, and then at our own fall symposium at BYU Law School. And this culminated in a meeting of about 40 human rights experts, scholars from around the world, who met in Punta del Este, Uruguay in December, early December 2018, and came to agreement on what we have come to think of as the Swiss Army knife of human rights concepts, human dignity, something that is a tool that is very useful in a lot of different types of situation. And if you look at the Punta del Este Declaration, which is included in the book that we've brought for you today, you'll see that it's made up of 10 brief articles, and each of those articles is full of practical uses of the concept of human dignity. So our plan today is to hear from Ján, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the Dignity Project, as we've come to think of it, and the elements of that project and this book. And then we will ask JaLynn Prince, the photographer, to share her perspective on the images that she brought to the project. And then Jane Wise will share her perspective as the key editor and designer and author working with us on the book project. So Ján, let me turn the floor to you.
Yeah, may I speak from the first? Thank you, Brent, for kind words and cooperation. And I would say that we have not only moment of presentation of the book, but rather invitation for all of you and the others to join and promote culture of human dignity, because this is the most important task or our noble duty, because we are all endowed with human dignity, which means not only rights but also duties, which means responsibility for the world we live in. And it can be better or worse. It can be century like business as usual, following the 20s, very tragic, bloody, or something more humane, and it depends on each of us. And why we need to stress human dignity or emphasize dignity today, because we need to defend principles of justice against religious fundamentalism, political autocratic regimes, ideological oppression, ethical relativism, which is also spreading. We witness opposition to universality of fundamental rights, divisions among countries and nations on human rights understanding, refusal or questioning of these rights in time of migration crisis. If there is a point of convergence and of possible consent between religious humanists and secular humanists, it is human dignity as a base of each person's undeniable and inalienable rights. Dignity is a privileged way to address issues of freedom and equality in society correctly. I want to stress that human dignity is a common denominator, for example, for 3 Abrahamic religions. All Abrahamic traditions consider that religious freedom is rooted in the dignity of human person. It is their common denominator from the past and for the future. I will not dwell on details why and quote from Bible or Quran, but this message is very important because, as Brett said, through dignity or karama in Arabic, I was able to speak in very difficult conditions or territories like Sudan, Pakistan, Iraq, Burkina Faso, Egypt, and elsewhere, in many, many countries which face high conflicts or challenges of coexistence of different communities. The basic secular roots or definitions which we like to quote, and I just remind that Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the preamble and in the article number 1 speaks about dignity. I will recall preamble various recognition of the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Then it puts articles, and number 1 says, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. In the European Union, where I played the role of the first ever EU Special Envoy for freedom of religion or belief outside of the Union, we have since 2000 Charter of Fundamental Rights. And in the beginning, it lists 4 basic values of the Union. The first one is dignity. And then articles and chapters. And chapter 1, article 1 is protection of human dignity in the European Union. The respect to human dignity is really, I think, the meeting point for religious and secular humanists if they are really humanists. Convergence of different traditions and conceptions leads from definition of a common ground to the promotion of common good. And this means common victory for our generation and for future. Dignity, as we understand it, is the highest worthiness or richness that each person possesses and therefore transcends the whole material world. Value of human person is not in what he has, but in what she is. A unique being with intellectual, spiritual, and material dimension of living. Each human being is a person. Only person can have rights and duties. And it speaks about personalism instead of individualism or collectivism. Person is not a matter, thing, animal, or object. Person is always a subject with reason, with conscience, and with freedom. Dignity expresses innate value of a person endowed, as I said, by reason, free will, capacity to procreate and to build relations to other persons. Persons has fundamental, inviolable, and inalienable rights and duties, and these are implemented individually or in community with others. Human dignity is foundational principle of all human rights, as it was said. In dignity, we are all equal, but in identity, we are all different. And this is not a problem. This is a definition. This is a defining principle. And it's true towards the past, today, and towards tomorrow. So billions of people reflect this principle, all different in identity, all equal in dignity. I want to stress 3 dimensions of dignity, and this will be, let's say, my message and invitation for all of us, for you today, because these 3 dimensions should be understood together and promoted together. Me, thee, and we. The first dimension is my personal dimension. It concerns me, myself. My specificity is my uniqueness. In common with each and every person, past, present, and future, which means billions of people, I am unique. I am unique. And from this uniqueness, I draw my dignity and project my specificity. This is something original that nobody can ever replicate or replace. It is a specific and unique contribution to my fellow human beings. If this originality, authenticity, and uniqueness is not revealed, fulfilled, it will be lost. It will be lost. Nobody can replicate it or replace it. My own dignity causes me to interpret the world, make choices, interact with others according to my own conscience, my reason, and my convictions. To do so, I need to exercise all my freedoms: freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of action. Secondly, human dignity is not limited to my own freedom. It includes freedom of the other. It invites me to express tolerance and to define my limits in order to respect the other. There is, of course, also an imperative of equity and equality, and therefore of justice. Human dignity is a responsibility that must be shouldered. If dignity gives rise to rights, it also implies duties and responsibilities. And these responsibilities are not static. They are not fixed. They are developing in time and exercised and maintained through the time. And third dimension means social and societal dimension. Since I am part of community, the dignity has also a collective or societal dimension. The religious social responsibility in particular is that of seeking common good. For their part, religious actors need to contribute to the strengthening of social cohesion and justice in society. I think this notion should be developed more broadly in order to understand that there is not only corporate social responsibility, but also religious social responsibility for living together in dignity, in respect of dignity. And when we met in the BYU Provo, I said, and I stick to the point, that human dignity should have a triple meaning or function: departure point for any public engagement and policy; secondly, the objective of any public policy; and thirdly, criterion for any action, any public policy. And therefore, if we want to find more unity around problems of the time, solutions of the problems, I think we need to dig deeper and to get united more around dignity of all and for all. And this is precisely the aim of Punta del Este Declaration. It has a very nice name. It has very noble purpose, which is recommitment to the universal human rights, not only celebration and commemoration, but recommitment, and recommitment to the source of everything, human dignity. So in the name of this theme, I would like also to not only welcome you, but invite you to look into this declaration, which has special name from the east of the west, or Punta del Este is in Uruguay. It's on the west, but oriented to the east, which means invitation for all. Not only to speak about dignity, but to promote culture of human dignity of everyone and everywhere, and for everyone and everywhere. Culture of dignity is promoted when human dignity of all is duly respected and protected. And actually, and I finish here, culture of human dignity implements, respects two basic ethical rules, golden and silver. You know them. I suppose I want to repeat that. Don't do the others what you don't want the others to do unto you is a minimum and silver principle, silver rule. And the golden one is in positive sense. Do the others what you want the others to do unto you. So simple, so ancient, but so forgotten, abandoned, disbalanced in our times that many people suffer. And I hope that this nice event, presentation of the book, will multiply or increase the number of those who are committed to promote human rights and human dignity of all and for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Figeľ. Next, we'll hear from JaLynn Prince. I first met JaLynn when I came to Washington, D.C. as a freshman at Georgetown University in 1981. And just showing the world as a small place, she and her husband, Greg, who is here today as well, took me under their wing and have mentored and befriended me over all of these intervening years. And I had seen her photos about a decade ago. And when we began thinking about this project, I naturally thought of JaLynn. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I think I'll stand right here. It is a delight to be with you today, and this is one of my favorite topics in the entire world. Let me tell you how I got involved in this. A long time ago, I was looking at some black and white photographs, and I thought, I want to do something like that and record my family's life. And it happened to be black and white photos of John F. Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy and their children in summers off the beach. Well, I started back into my artistic ventures. I've been a fine arts student prior to that. But it took me down a very interesting path, because as I got involved with what it is to see mothers and children together and to document what the reality is, not only here but around the world, doors started to open for me. And I began working with NGOs around the world. And the thing that I would do is I would go in with an NGO and I would have full access to the work that they were doing. In exchange, I would let them have the images that I would take, because very often one of the hardest things to do is to hire a photographer and get information about the work you're doing so others can see what it is and to raise funds to support the work. So I was embedded in so many different interesting situations around the world. And I also had a very interesting mentor by the name of Steve Mccurry, and you're probably aware of him with a simple photograph that's been on the front of National Geographic a few million times, and of Afghan girl. And he became a mentor, and I've had the opportunity of traveling with him as well, and to gain more insight into how he has shaped his career. Well, as I have traveled around, I've had the opportunity, probably out of 100% of the people that I have photographed, that 2/3 of those are not people that necessarily have a position in life, but some of the most dignified people at the heart and soul of their beings, of people everywhere. The other third happen to be diplomats very often, or leaders, are people who have been in the trenches, or people who have been causing commotion, and not necessarily the best commotion. I've had the opportunity, and I wanted to share a little bit of a story with some of the photos up here. This lady right here to my left is a wonderful woman who has, as you can tell looking at her, a wonderful, rich soul, dignity, air about her. We were sitting in her living room talking about a mutual friend. Well, a mutual friend, her daughter, and a close friend of mine that had lived here in the United States, that had passed away about a month earlier, and her body had been taken back to Uganda. And I had the opportunity of going there about a month later, and we were sitting comforting one another. Her understanding, her look toward who her daughter was and what she did was very moving, because I was able to put a number of things into context. Because this lady right here had her life changed by the dignified actions of her daughter, who had come to the United States, who would send a little bit of money home each month. It gathered a fair amount, at least in Ugandan sums, and for the first time ever, power was able to be taken to their village. For the first time, there was a light bulb that could be on at night in homes, so students could continue their homework in the winters. It also meant that there would be ways of getting water, and the water could be close and not have to be carried sometimes 3, 4, 5 miles several times a day. This woman represents so much dignity, and what she had taught her daughter about sacrifice and what her daughter did to bring something viable and real to her village, who has made a difference in education for future generations. There's an attitude now that everybody goes to school and that you can study as long as you need to because there's light. This young man here, I look at him and I see a young boy with a little bit of confusion in his eyes. And I wonder that about many of us. As a photographer, I get to imagine things about people and I get to learn things about people. But what is his path going to be? Is it going to be that of nurturing human dignity? Is it going to be a life of compassion? Is it going to be a hardened life where there's no room to view humanity? If you look at the backdrop there and with the other students, you can see that it doesn't depend solely on him, but who is educating him? What is the background that he is going to be growing up in? Who is going to help him shape his thoughts and his attitudes and what his behaviors may be? And if he's going to make place in his life and in the world for others and to recognize their dignity. This young lady here, we had a bit of a language problem. This is a young lady that I met on a train waiting in a station in Myanmar. And Myanmar is breaking my heart. Because of all of the people that I met there and all of the people that I saw, I know many of them are facing hardships right now. But in that moment, this young girl, and I think most likely she was the child's mother, but she could have been the child's sister. But I look at the young child right here and the trust in looking up to someone a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and kinder, and the hope and the dignity in which she holds herself and the potential of the humanity that rests within this child. The young man over here, this was taken on his 18th birthday. He was the youngest king in the world. At age 3, his father died. He was mentored in Uganda about what it would be like to be king. And so he had a whole tribe working with him, trying to teach him the lessons that a father might have taught. But at age 18, on his birthday, was the day before his coronation. Right now, the verdict is still out. There's an opportunity for great humanity, But there is so much political pressure and things beyond one person or one tribe or one village. I hope he moves forward with dignity, because his office as being the tribal leader, the tribal king, gives him the opportunity to do some remarkable things. At the same time, while I was on that trip, I had the opportunity of talking with some of the freedom fighters of just a couple of decades prior to this, where the freedom fighters were fighting against Idi Amin and the atrocities and the lack of humanity and the lack of dignity that this gentleman, no, I won't say gentleman, that this man perpetrated, and the pain and the anguish that had been caused, and the annihilation of dignity. It's an opportunity as a photographer, and especially the way that I've had the opportunity to engage the world, to see what the stories are. And each country is different, but each is very similar. I see huge comparisons between one of my other favorite places, Cuba, and what's happening in Myanmar, and what's happening with human dignity. I saw in Cuba, as I was photographing some families that were living in very, very difficult situations, in small apartments, in what had been glorious buildings at one point. But as of 4 years ago, they were crowded into small living spaces with their families with very little opportunity and few resources and deep frustrations, yet an optimism. And every place that I went, they were saying, yes, the United States, yes, they hold people in dignity. And I hope that is the case. I hope it is that is the case around the world. I've had a couple of very interesting mentors, or a few interesting mentors along this pathway. One of them happens to be the daughter of the former president of India. Though with her station, she has been helping those that are unseen and unheard. Eunice Shriver, which is kind of an interesting irony because the Kennedy photos brought me into this, became a very dear friend. And working with her and seeing how she started the Special Olympics, and also things were those with disabilities around the world. And I've also had a chance to see Esther Peterson, who had compassion and saw the dignity of working women and made certain that something was done about it. And every day you pick up a bottle or a can or a carton, and you'll see the number of calories and the nutritional elements on that package. And this woman was responsible for that because she wanted to help mothers understand what types of food they should buy for their children so they could have a better future, not just what would be filling their bellies. I would like you to look at a couple of other photos too. I look at this young lady. Can you just tell the page right there? 31. Take a look at this young lady. This is my ending here. This is a young lady who happens to be part of an African tribe, and she and her teacher both have HIV/AIDS. They were very compassionate toward one another, and their entire community had been supportive of them. It made me look and understand, going around the world, how important it is to turn around and look at what we have at home. It has taken me into the arena of working with adult autism because in our home, in our backyard, within our walls, we have a 31-year-old son, and he is being denied many of his rights. So no matter where we are, if it's with our families, if we're traveling abroad, doing academic work, we have an opportunity to look at dignity and defend it. I hope I can do more of it through my photos and cause conversations. And it is a privilege to speak with all of you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, JaLynn. Jane, the floor is yours.
I am a writer and I'm also an attorney. And when you define a concept under the law, it usually goes on, and there's a paragraph A and B and C because we try to anticipate all the perambulations that might happen. Dignity is an ambiguous term. It's not defined the way we define legal terms. So the exciting thing for me in putting this book together was to compile together material that would help people come to an understanding of what dignity means. We have in the book the Punta del Este Declaration, so those are principles of what dignity is. And then we have JaLynn's beautiful photographs where you just have to look and see the uniqueness of each individual, which just brings forth a story and respect. And then we have quotations from 100 of the people who signed this declaration and what human dignity means to them. And often they're a bit of a story. So you compile those together and see why the people are focusing on dignity, why it's important to them. And by the time you get to the end of the book, you understand how this can be a focus and an underlying principle to understanding.
All right, thank you very much, Jane. As we conclude, I wanted to just share one of the quotations. If you have the book in front of you, this is on page 15. And this is from an Oxford theologian named Andrew Teal. And I think it really captures the spirit of what a joint voice declaration is all about. He says this: "These images of people, of different cultures, images of affection, of honoring human diversity, remind us that declarations are not about having a correct argument, but are expressions of value and love. The inalienable dignity of each person and their spiritual and personal value cannot be erased, though we see betrayals in abundance. The people in these pictures urge us to never give up hope and mutual advocacy despite the magnitude of the task." The points of light in the title refer to the perspectives on human dignity that are in the book, as well as the images of particular human beings that are in the book. And as Ján said, what we really hope is to start a conversation and to encourage the creation and the cultivation of cultures of dignity. There are a number of ongoing projects we're working on. One of them is a book on the founding figures of human dignity, which will have chapters about the key drafters of the UDHR and what they thought about human dignity, people like P.C. Chang and Charles Malik and Eleanor Roosevelt. We've also worked on a project on religious perspectives on human dignity that will be published as a book that's edited by a scholar from Indonesia and a scholar from Baylor University. And we're hoping to plan a major global conference on civilizational discourse on human dignity, where we invite people from different parts of the world to bring not necessarily religious, but civilizational perspectives of what human dignity means to them in their area of the world. Part of this is motivated by a project that we did in Africa following up on the Punta del Este Declaration on African perspectives on human dignity, which you'll also find on our website. You may have other ideas, and we'd love to hear those as well, and would love to invite you to be part of some of these ongoing projects on human dignity as we move forward. Ján made a special effort to be here with us today. He had to get special permission from the government of Slovakia to fly here and be here with us. He arrived a day late after considerable persistence in his desire to be here to share this opportunity and this occasion with you. So if you wouldn't mind, please join me in thanking Ján, but also Jane and JaLynn for their work on this project. Rather than a formal Q&A, I think we'll just try to reserve a few minutes. Ján had the idea if anyone would like to have your copy of the book signed, please come up and we can do that. This is actually the first time the four of us have been together in a room. This whole project was conceived and executed via Zoom, so it's fun for us to be together. Thank you very much for being here, and God bless us, everyone.
I got exception not from the Slovak government, but from the US government. For those who are not knowledgeable on this matter, it's called national interest exception. So thank you very much, Americans, for this treatment of Slovak national. Thank you.